I started from the question of how come some people enjoy other people's suffering? And then how come other people in the same society are just the opposite? They get their joy not in believing that there's bad people that need to be punished, but they get their joy in contributing to people's well-being. The first thing I'll suggest is you can't teach anybody anything. And to have that as an objective is itself to create problems. So let's change the objective. Let's never try to teach anybody anything or to change anybody. If that's your objective, you'll create resistance. Saying what we don't want doesn't make clear what we do want. But worse than that, if we frame our objectives in getting rid of something, it leads to violence very often. It makes violence seem attractive when we try to get rid of something. Behind every feeling, there is a need. When she hears your needs without hearing any criticism or demand, and you hear her needs without any criticism and demand, the solution will find you. The conflict will resolve itself. It does need to be resolved. But what most of us do, we skip this and go right to here. Needs contain no reference to specific ways of getting the needs met. Those are preferences or strategies or requests. So we make a big difference between needs and between preferences, requests, strategies. All needs are universal. Every human being in the world has the same needs. I'm not doing it for money. I'm not doing it to get a positive report card. I'm doing it because something that has increased joy in my life, it's joyful to share it with others. It's a fun game. It's the most fun game I've ever found, contributing to people's well-being. I'm really confident it's the most fulfilling game we human beings will ever find.
Hello and welcome to Igniting Compassion. I'm super excited to have John Kenyon with us today. This show is sponsored by Spirituality Gone Wild and Love Smart Cards, and every week we're seeking to bring more tools to the table as it relates to nonviolent communication. So I'd love to tell you a little bit about our guest for today. We have John Kenyon. John Kenyon has been a certified nonviolent communication trainer for 20 years. He's devoted his life and career to furthering human connection and cooperation around the world through empathic communication. He's a trainer, coach, mediator, speaker, and author dedicated to sharing the skills, practices, and structures of empathy and mindfulness in conversation as part of a global health and wellness movement. His approach provides conversation maps for navigating challenges and conflicts, inner and outer, in all aspects of life. John has an MS in clinical psychology. He's the co-creator of the International Mediate Your Life training program, which is based in the work of nonviolent communication. He offers online and in-person training programs for the public and for organizations. He's also the author of several books, and I had such a wonderful time going online to his website and checking out his work. John, I'm so excited to have you joining us on this show. So I just want to give you a really warm welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Katrina. Really glad to be here.
Yeah. And I of course, I like to check out people's websites ahead of time and get a better sense of their work. But one of the things that really stood out to me is not only that you've been a NVC certified trainer for 20 years, which is a long time in the NVC world, but that your story, the way you discovered nonviolent communication, really went wow, this is my work, is quite unique and extraordinary. And I just love if you'd be willing to share that story with us.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is when my colleague and I, Ike Laster, ended up going to Pakistan to work with Afghan tribal elders. And I'd actually came across Marshall Rosenberg in 1998. And in that moment, it was actually at a mediation conference. And he was the keynote speaker. And just every part of me knew that just as he was speaking about that approach to communication and conflict, that was everything that I was looking for, kind of brought together everything I was deeply passionate about. And so then, I got immediately involved with the work and ended up pretty quickly getting very connected to a lot of people in the organization, as well as Marshall, and then got invited to be on the board of the Center for Nonviolent Communication. And we were at a board meeting in Europe in 2002, early 2002. And this was right after 9/11 in 2001. So there was all the bombing of Afghanistan and the refugees streaming across the border into Pakistan, and just millions of people along the border there in refugee camps. And Marshall had the idea that he wanted to go into the camps and do some NVC training. And myself and a colleague of mine who was also on the board of CNVC at the time found out about this, and we were like, "Hey, Marshall, can we go with you?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." And then things, right as we were at the board meeting, we were going to go right from there to Pakistan, and things got super dangerous. The State Department was putting out warnings saying Americans should leave Pakistan and not go there. And so Marshall changed his plans. And for some crazy reason, Ike and I decided to go anyways. Ike had gone a little early, and I felt like I just needed to go, even though Marshall was not going to go. And it was just when I look back, it's like the craziest thing. Like, it was super dangerous, and we could have died, And when I was on the plane going over, and I remember waking up in the plane and just being in a cold sweat of panic, like, oh my God, what have I done? I could easily die doing this. What am I doing? So, but it was this example, I don't know, for folks, listening, that when you have these moments of like really strong intuition or something that feels so deep, like to do something, even though your rational mind says this is crazy, that it doesn't make any sense. So and sometimes we don't follow that, but I did in that moment. And it turned out, as Katrina, you were referencing, it turned out to be one of the most pivotal moments in my life to go there with Ike. And we spent 2 weeks total. We did, even though Marshall wasn't with us and the whole plan was set up for him to go do this, there was enough support when we got there to help us get into the camps. And it's a whole saga of how that happened. It took a while, but we did make our way into one of the refugee camps, and we ended up mediating a conflict between two elders representing they're from different tribes. And there was this conflict that had emerged in the group that we were with on the third day of our training with them. Or it wasn't really a training, because they didn't relate to what we were doing and the way we were in some Western workshop way. Like we were so naive in so many ways. But, for the first 2 days, it was just like ton empathy. Like, what they wanted to do is, seeing us as representatives of the US, is share their pain with us, just tremendous anguish and pain and rage. And so we just listened. And then on this third day, this conflict came up, and it was this opportunity to share, like, oh my God, because we've been asking for examples, and they kind of said they didn't have any, and they didn't really understand, well, why we were there. And so this conflict erupted, and I was excited because I immediately thought, oh, here's something we can show them. We can show them why we're here and what these skills are about and how to do this, right? And my colleague Ike was like looking like kind of horrified, like, oh, what's going on here, like, and luckily I was too naive to even, I was just focused on we have this thing we can work with, and luckily it worked, because we got them kind of calmed down. We got a representative from both sides and I ended up facilitating this NVC, nonviolent communication conversation between these two elders. And it really worked, even though the translation was really difficult. There are like 8 languages in the room, and our translator didn't even speak English that well. And it was very, very difficult with the translation. But we managed to do this process, which was, as you, in the intro that Katrina played around Marshall and what he said about the work, that we were able to help each person, each elder, get connected to their underlying needs, help the other one reflect back those needs to the person, even though that took a lot of work, because most people aren't used to doing that. But, we got them both to not only get to their own needs, but also say the needs of the other, and see that there's a whole group of elders, like 40, watching this. So we're at the front doing this mediation. There are other elders in the room watching from all over the camp, like far and wide. They'd come for this. And they got to this kind of connected place of understanding the needs that were separate from the beliefs and strategies of how to meet them. I remember turning to the whole room and saying, so does anybody in this whole room not share all of these needs? Mm-hmm. The ones that have come up on both sides, but the idea that our needs are universal. They're not for any particular person or culture or whatever. It's just like our tribe. We all have the same basic needs for love and trust and safety and respect and things like that. So, yeah. and then we worked together and we found a solution. And at the end, when we got to that solution and we worked together to find a way to meet all the needs, working together, I remember asking the group, so that's it? So we did it. We came up with this solution together this way. And there was like this pin drop silence. And then everybody in the room started clapping and cheering, and they got up and they were just talking in this really happy, excited way with each other. And the most senior elder came over to us after and said, wow, that was really great. If we knew how to do this, we wouldn't have to fight anymore. Mm-hmm. So coming from a place where it's tremendously war-torn for so long, we experienced, and everybody in that room, like, yeah, this is possible, even with all the challenges of culture and translation and language, that we were able to facilitate this empathic connection and work together to find a solution. And it was just life-changing for all of us. And then Ike and I came back from that, went on to develop a body of work, as Katrina said, called Mediate Your Life. So that's the short version of the story.
That's a powerful story, to go into a war-torn place, and that you're at this refugee camp where people who would want nothing to do with each other, they're like enemies to each other, are stuck in the same refugee camp. Is that right?
Well, they're different tribes. And there's often, warfare and conflict between the tribes, as well as with other countries, like the Russian Soviet Union coming there, and Americans doing all that we're doing and bombing. And so lots of different, tremendous conflict in that country, that part of the world, as we know, and long history. So, they had all that kind of those different differences and tensions within. They're all from Afghanistan, but they're in different tribes, different dialect, different languages. Wow. And so, this was sort of facilitating, sorry for that noise, facilitating with that kind of history of conflict and tension. Yeah.
Hmm. I would imagine that these tribal leaders, seeing as they're both in the same station within their tribe, that they probably had similar needs. And I don't know that everybody watching this understands what universal needs are from an NVC perspective. Would you just do a quick what needs are from an NVC perspective? And also, I'm curious if you remember were there shared needs? Right? Because they're both head of their tribe. I would imagine they both have needs for respect and for safety and well-being of all of the people within their tribe, that those might be some common needs where they might like see their own reflection in the other person as a part of this process. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what happened, and yeah, I think you've said it pretty well. But maybe I'll say a little bit more about the conflict. It was because we've been there for a little while, and hospitality is a huge part of that part of the world. We were asked by one person or one group to come to the mosque to worship with them, or and that was immediately the whole like surge of protest and like, no, that's wrong, and they can't do that, you can't do that, and that's not right. And so that was the conflict. It was about us, actually. We were the source of that conflict in a sense, and yet I was able to facilitate that on both sides of an elder on both sides. And yes, so on one side, around the person and the group that was saying that they invited us, they thought it'd be okay, was, like the needs to share in culture, to have hospitality, to connection, and understanding of each other's faith and culture, and so all those kind of needs, right? And then, as you were kind of pointing to as well, Katrina, on the other side, about saying, no, this is wrong, you can't. So we often think in those right, wrong terms, right? And get in conflict about what's right and wrong. And so underneath that, though, as you were saying, needs for safety, for respect, for, honoring of tradition, those kind of needs as well. And so when it was like putting all those needs together sort of on the table, and everybody in the room could see, yeah, who doesn't want all of them? Who doesn't want hospitality and connection and sharing, and who doesn't want safety and respect and honoring of tradition? And so yeah, then it just became like, oh, right, of course we all. So the idea that needs take us to this, I think, of this dimension, this realm of our human experience where that's universal. It's not just separate and individual, but that's universal, truly universal. What we all want everywhere on the planet, separate from any particular thing or what we want or don't want in particular, but something that's just what we all, literally everywhere on the planet, can go, oh yeah, of course, we all want safety, we all want trust, we all want community, we all want, belonging, whatever those universal qualities. Yes. So yeah, that's just a way to connect underlying all our differences.
Yes, I love it. I sometimes call it the common denominator, right? If you have a complex equation, sometimes that common denominator is really, really helpful. When we can come to that, then we can figure out how to resolve the complexities. So yeah. Awesome. And so then Mediate Your Life was born out of this. Would you tell us a bit about Mediate Your Life? What all does that encompass?
Yeah, well, I started coming out of this experience. We were like, wow, that was just so powerful to use what we learned from Marshall Rosenberg about mediating conflict with this approach, these skills, this kind of paradigm of connecting empathically and in what our universal needs are, and then going to the solution from there. Right? They were like, wow, that's just such a powerful approach to people learning about these skills and applying it to conflict and trying to mediate conflict. So we started our training. We called it NVC mediation, which was a common term at that time, and we called our work that. And we started sort of giving people the chance to learn from us about that. And we were learning too as we were developing that training. And what we kind of stumbled on is this 3-chair model, we ended up calling it, the model of 2 disputants. So the 3 chairs of mediation, right? 2 chairs of the 2 people in conflict facing each other. And then the mediator as a 3rd chair, right? Sitting so it creates like a triangle, right? Where the mediator is there supporting the 2 sides to hear each other. And and just turned out that people practicing in triads, we got triad practice of mediation, and rotating through the roles. So maybe starting off being yourself and somebody playing the role of the other person in your conflict and somebody else mediating and doing that, and then rotating. So then you could move to taking the role of the other person in your own conflict, right? Role playing the other person. And then eventually you could rotate into being the mediator of your own conflict, and two people playing like you and the other person, and you're mediating between somebody playing your own conflict for you. And it just started to grow from there. But all these really powerful ways of learning and taking empathically, basically taking different roles. What does it really mean to be in that third chair perspective of holding both sides empathically, even when one side is ourself, to how do you, so it became this metaphor for me, particularly over time, that the third chair is like, to me, it represents at this point, consciousness and awareness and the kind of non-duality of a level of experience, that we can literally hold the duality of two sides from a non-dual perspective. And so it just really grew from there, and how you could mediate every aspect of your life, whether it's between others, you can support other people, but you can also support yourself being in conflict with others, and internal conflict, parts of ourselves being in conflict. And then things like, what do you do before and after conflict? And so we started developing, we call these maps, conversation maps, that depending on I think of like the metaphor of a world of conflict. There's different territories or regions of conflict, like inner, different kinds of outer, and sort of before, during, and after. And like how do you prepare yourself, or how do you debrief afterwards and keep kind of staying with a difficult situation? So these different maps that came out of this basic model of a three-chair framework, and two perspectives at odds and a third kind of unifying perspective. And it's all based in these basic components that come out of nonviolent communication. But there's something about also having that external framework that sort of symbolizes, it's like, to me, it's taking those components and putting it into a physical representation of two sides, the two conflicting perspectives, and something that's holding a unified perspective that then not just layered into these different conversation maps. And our training has just become, how do you learn and practice for yourself and help other people with these many different kinds of maps of conversation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Certainly in my practice of nonviolent communication, being able to do role play and practice different characters has been one of the most potent opportunities for personal development and growth and understanding of the NVC principles. I want to make sure people also know where they can get more information. We've got johnkenyon.com, nvc.org, and of course the Love Smart cards, which can support practice at home. So I'll just have those along the bottom so that people know where to find you. I also want to say, in the 12 years I've been doing nonviolent communication, anytime I hear the idea of really getting trained in NVC mediation, your name is right up there at the top of the list in terms of the many people who do offer this. Of course, I'm in the Bay Area, so no doubt that's also influencing your name being the first one that comes through. But I really love hearing about what you're doing with this three-chair approach, as well as looking at what do you do prior to entering into discussing conflict, and what do you do as a way to complete. Really hearing a whole package in that. And I'm excited I got to experience your work across the aisle just this last Wednesday. Seems like this is a relatively new project that has come up for you, especially in regards to the current political challenges we're having. Not only watching it on the TV screen or the news, but it's really entered so much of the public conversation. So I really loved the experience of last Wednesday, and I'm wondering if you'd just share with us what inspired you to create Across the Aisle.
Well, I want to give credit to my another colleague, Paul Sterling, who I believe you know, Katrina, well. And so Paul and I had recently, a few months ago, there's Paul. He had me come on his a show he does related to relationship, and did a interview with me there, and then we just started, kind of following up and talking, and he came up with this, like, why don't we do something related to politics? And he came up with this idea across the aisle. That phrase came through him, and I said, yeah, that sounds great. And then we just kind of brainstormed just what ended up what we're doing now, where we just in this online forum where we can invite people to show up and invite the whole spectrum of political ideology and belief and perspective, and then try to help people hear each other. Yes. And even if we don't agree, which it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of us don't get much training or support for that, even though intellectually we can know the difference maybe. But a lot of times people think if I understand you, that means I'm somehow agreeing with you. And so one of the big focuses of what we're offering in this across the aisle, these weekly meetings, is a chance to really build that muscle of how we can really hear and understand someone that we maybe radically disagree with, but we can still understand. We could still, like in the 3-chair model sense, we can try to kind of move into their chair, or try to really understand what does the world look like through that frame, through that perspective over there. Even though it's not mine, I can still stay very connected to my own truth and reality and what I believe. But if I can also somehow, that's kind of the 3rd chair perspective. Can I also hold somebody else without losing my own? Can I incorporate in a way, or just kind of hold the possibility of, oh, there's this other way that the people are seeing it. Mm-hmm. And then from that, I don't even think, we need to agree on all these things. I think some people hope, if we just hear each other enough, we can come to agreement. Well, probably not, given what we're seeing now, right? But it's okay, actually. Like in my mediation work, I see it's okay. Like sometimes people can't even agree on what the basic observation of what happened, much less their interpretations and beliefs about it. And that's all right. Like if you can just hear each other, that goes such a long way for like creating and then if you can get to the underlying needs, as we talked about earlier, then it's like, wow, we can feel some connection and understanding even with the disagreement. And then there's possibility to move forward on finding something that we can agree on to do in response to and to meet those needs. So like I talked about in the Pakistan story, right? They had all these differences of beliefs, but once we got to the needs, then we came up with a strategy that actually worked for everybody in the room of how we could meet those needs without having to agree on the other stuff. So it's really, that's the vision.
I feel such a big, deep sigh of relief of we don't have to agree, because we can drive ourselves crazy trying to get another person to agree with us. But if we can actually listen and understand that their perception of reality might be radically different than ours, but then again, as you said, get to those, what are those underlying needs? What's that commonality that we have? That's where we can stay connected. We can stay in love and respect, even though we might be seeing things different. Well, I'm very excited that we have some additional guests on our show today, and that we get to do a demonstration of this work. I love to pull up just a few slides inspired by what Paul had shared on Wednesday, and so delighted to hear that it was your connection with Paul that birthed this into being. He's a great leader in this conscious communication world as well. So some I found, I really love this one from the Dalai Lama, right? Only the development of compassion and understanding for others can bring us the tranquility and happiness we all seek. That understanding for others is key to tranquility. Recognizing, this was one Paul used, that sometimes we're looking at the same thing from a very different perspective. Right? Doesn't mean that one person's right and the other person's wrong. We're seeing from different perspectives. Similarly to the allegory of the blind men and the elephant, we're all feeling a different part of the elephant. So we're getting beyond those ideas of right and wrong here, and instead what we're going into is, as we're listening to each other, can we respond to the other person in a way where they feel that they've been heard, they've been understood, and that they're valued for what they have to share? So those are some of the pieces that I see as the foundation to this work. Is there anything else you might like to say before you invite somebody to share a political opinion?
Well, maybe the process that we came up with for this Across the Aisle event that we've done it 3 times. We're doing each Wednesday through October at least, and then we'll see what we do after that. See what the world is like after that. Yeah, so would now be a good time to share that process, Katrina?
Yes.
Yeah, so basically the first person can just speak their political perspective. And I usually will, as each person talks, I'll do a little reflecting back of and kind of modeling that understanding without agreeing or disagreeing, and probably getting to some of the underlying needs, just doing a little reflecting back to get that. And then the next person that wants to come to speak, the request from me is to first say what you heard the first person say. So the second person saying what you heard the first person say until that person says, yeah, you heard me. And sometimes people don't feel fully understood, but at least you can feel heard. Like, yeah, you heard the words, right? You got the words right. So, and then the second person can say whatever their perspective is. And so the idea that the second person that talks would have a different perspective. So where it's a stretch, it's like not easy to hear this first person because it's a different belief. And so that's what I like, that there are these differences to bring out. So the second person then can say, what is their different belief in some way? And then, then just keep repeating that process. Then have a third person that wants to come on that before they share their different perspective, they say what they heard that second person say until that person says, yeah, you heard me. And again, it's not agreeing with me, but yeah, you heard me. And then I just kind of keep facilitating that and adding some of my empathic kind of reflection and understanding to keep the focus on that. So that's pretty much it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I'm gonna bring our guests into the stream now, and so we can start this process, and we'll get we got 2 more people here. All right. So welcome to all of our guests. And John, I'm just going to hand the facilitation over to you, and thank you for this work.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming on to do this. I'm excited and grateful that we can do this together. And we don't have a lot of time since we only have total to the top of the hour. So it'll be a little quicker than maybe ideal, but we can give people a taste of this. So I think the first question is who'd like to go first with something you'd like to sort of put out there as a political perspective, a belief, something you feel strongly about that you just, maybe particularly on your mind today and every day, right? There's new stuff happening in the political world to react to and reflect on and share about. So just see who wants to go first with that. And hopefully you all get a chance. But with someone who wants to go first? And Corey, I see you talking, but I don't. You're muted. So you're unmuted.
I don't know. I have a perspective, but it's not necessarily a political belief system necessarily. It is an apolitical belief system, and it really is a perspective that challenges the whole concept of left and right, like what actually makes a person identify as a left or right positional person. And my perspective that all comes down to how they have oriented themselves in regard to inflammatory political talking points that are used by politicians. And that is really what divides people into left or right, how they orient with those talking points that trigger people.
Okay, well, why don't we go with that? And that's still something somebody could disagree with, right? So yeah, it sounds like it might be a little complex, and so maybe just take kind of the essence of it, or sort of maybe one piece of it that's really, you'd really like to be understood about. And how's that sound?
Sure. Let's see. So most people, if they run into each other on the street, whether they identify as left or right, they will communicate in a way that really doesn't see any separation necessarily. It is only once they hit like triggering political points, really, that people kind of separate and realize that, oh, you're like this and I'm like this.
Mm-hmm.
But really, a lot of times the political talking points have nothing to do with the realities of people's belief systems. So like, if my position is, well, my personal belief is that abortion, I believe in the current Roe versus Wade precedent, 12 weeks, abortion is okay. And in circumstances with complications after that, it's okay as well. Someone on the right, many people on the right are going to have the exact same belief, but it's the political talking points that people hear in their heads that tell them that this other person believes a completely extreme position on this.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that when you look at how people kind of react to each other on these different political topics or issues that tend to be very controversial, that you're saying that you think it's more about the talking points they're listening to, like kind of the leaders of that party or that group that they're associated with, not necessarily like if they were just focusing on what they actually believe, but if they start thinking about all the kind of what the group they're part of thinks and the leaders are saying of that's kind of driving a lot of the conflict. Is that right?
Yes, and the leaders are actually not really leaders. They're more of hucksters, because they are using these political talking points to kind of stanchion their bases, but their belief systems don't generally align with their base and value. The general population is heavily anti-war. Like most of the population is greatly anti-war. But if you move into politicianal ranks, suddenly you find all these people are pro-war. Almost all the politicians are pro-war. They're like war, defense, defense, defense.
So let me just see if I'm getting that point about the leaders maybe having other motivations. And so maybe just, again, it gets more complicated, but just what are the main point, the first point you were making is that people individually might more easily not, have some common ground, but that if they're listening to the whole group and all the talking points of that group, they can get more radical, kind of more extreme in their reactions to each other. So something, if I hear the need in that, maybe it's kind of like being sort of a kind of self-awareness or self-connection to, your own real experienced beliefs, and not just the listening to what others in your group say. Does that sound right? Or how would you put it?
That would be a perspective you could have on it. Let's see.
What's the need there that you would want for people? Maybe what you're kind of wanting, maybe not sort of being so influenced in that way and wanting something else. Yes. So what would you say?
Okay. My need, I would say, would be representation in political circles that actually represent my values and belief. That would be my need.
Representations that represent values.
That would be my need in this situation.
Yeah, I guess I hear that kind of like a way that it could happen, like how things could be represented within a particular group or party. So what I'm going to is like maybe like ultimately what you're wanting is a kind of more ease of hearing and connecting to each other, some way of finding mutual understanding. So ultimately, like if people can see it the way you're offering, there could be a little more sort of ability to connect and understand each other. Is that? And by having some of the insights you're saying.
I would say that if people didn't buy into the talking points, the inflammatory rhetoric, that you would actually disempower these politicians from using divisiveness to rally votes, to get people to vote actually against their own interests a lot of the time. And they could actually be more clear on voting for people that actually represent their values.
Yeah. So what is that? I'd say. So I guess I think what I'm hearing is sort of like being really connected to oneself, one's own values, right? Really a kind of authenticity of one's own values, rather than being swayed by these other forces within your kind of affiliation.
Yes, not adopting somebody else's
right
extreme values.
Okay.
Because out of desperation and fear.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, there's a lot of complexity here in what you're saying, but maybe if we take that for the moment and see if somebody else would like to go next, and especially if you think, you don't really see it that way, that may what Corey is saying, but you're willing to maybe, like I was doing, just try to catch the essence of it, of what you heard, what his perspective is in a really, kind of brief essence way. And then say, whatever you want to say that might be different. So anybody want to go next? Asian, Katrina, Juan, Katerina, Juan. And Katrina, are you going to be part of this, or you're going to be kind of stepping back? Oh, you're muted.
I can be a part of this. Oops, I'm muted.
Yeah, you're good.
I should not be muted right now. Okay, great. Yeah, I could be a part of this, and if somebody else wants to step forward, I'm totally happy to give the mic to another person. Everybody's mic is on mute right now. You have, for people who are participating, you can see at the bottom where you can change yours to unmute yourself. If you'd like to step in.
Yeah, someone willing to go, given that we don't have a lot of time, maybe just go for it. Yeah, Katerina, willing to go?
I wasn't stepping up just because I agree in a lot of those points with Corey. I feel like that we do.
Well, before you say that, like, I think, yeah sure. Again, given time, let's just go for it. But if you would, just to model the saying what you heard, separate from whatever you think about what he said, however similar or maybe in some ways a little different, but just to kind of repeat back in a way the essence of what you heard him say.
Okay, so what I heard Corey say is that he feels that a lot of when it comes down to it, people in the United States, a lot of people deep down we have a lot of the same values and core beliefs, but that we got caught up in the talking points, and that the people who are actually representing us don't correspond to those same beliefs. That somehow when you get into office, that your belief systems, and this isn't something he said, but this I think is how it happens, is that the people who are paying to get people elected have way more influence over them than the people who they're actually representing. So they, in order to be elected, the defense industry, for example, because Corey was talking about war, they profit off of the United States being at war, and though most people in the United States don't want to go to war, that most people, and it's not their value system to want the United States to be at war, that the people who are in favor of war that are representing us actually in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, are much more likely to be pro-war than the average American citizen. And we got caught up in these things that, are pulling us so far to the edges, to the left and to the right. And so we have a hard time hearing each other.
Yeah. Thank you. And I, in terms of the underlying needs, what I was hearing and is about, I'm curious if you heard, like, this kind of people being really connected to their own authentic values for themselves, and in that a greater ease of having connection, understanding with each other. So did you hear that, or maybe saying what you heard at that deeper level of what's wanted, the wanting behind this?
I think we all want connection. I think we all, I do. Yeah, I think we all want connection, and we have a hard time understanding how to get it, because I do believe that we all have these, like, while we might have like fundamentally similar beliefs in certain respects, as just by virtue of being human, we get caught up in these things that don't really matter so much, and what I see as a huge
let me just,
issue.
before we go into what you think, just Corey, I want to just, do you have a sense that Katrina is hearing you? Do you feel?
Yeah, definitely. I think she's hearing me clearly.
Okay.
I would like to add that.
Well, I'm just worried about, if you add, we'll run out of time, and I'd love to hear at least from Juan a little bit too. Is that okay, Corey? And I'm sorry to not give you more time. I would like to be able to. So Katrina, maybe if you want to stake out some position here that may be a little different than what's been said, that maybe Juan might disagree with, potentially.
Well, I mean, I can go a little bit more inflammatory in that I do believe that our current, like, the person who occupies the White House right now is done so much damage to our country, so much damage to our Constitution, so much damage to the Supreme Court. And I really believe that he's in it for himself. He's in it. He's not here to represent the United States. He's in it for his own interests, to enrich himself, to enrich his buddies. And the problem is that we have this thing called Facebook that becomes an echo chamber. So whatever you already believe, you friend people that believe in the things that you believe, and so you're living in this echo chamber where you're seeing all of these people posting things that you agree with, and then if somebody posts something you disagree with, then you unfriend them because they piss you off, and yeah.
Let me say what I'm hearing about that. And again, I apologize. I'm just, want to see if we get to Juan before we run out of time here. But what I think I'm hearing as a kind of perspective that you're offering, that might be very different, right, to someone who's very enthusiastic about Trump and the presidency and everything, that very supportive, right? So you're saying you think he's actually been very, very harmful to the country, that he's doing things
to the environment.
To the environment, to the country, to just maybe the world. You think he's been doing very, very damaging things, not these all these good things that maybe he and supporters are saying how good. And you're saying you think he's doing a lot of things that are damaging, and that he's doing things to benefit and enrich himself primarily, and maybe
and his buddies
and people that he's close to. And also that Facebook and social media can kind of amplify the people who both support or don't support.
Yeah, you get more and more polarized people going further and further to the extremes, and it's like that, especially in government, because they're catering to the extremes. And so the people like me and Corey, who are more in the center, I was like, I'm pissed as hell at the Democrats because of what they did to Bernie, so I don't really consider myself a Democrat or a Republican. but I fucking hate Trump.
So
And
let's stay with that. Let's stay with that feeling towards Trump, because that's where there's this in our country. There's such polarization around support or not, and liking or not of what he's doing as a president. So I'm hearing a real clear kind of take on that. And I think underneath that, it sounds like the needs that anybody could want in our country, though, are that there's care for the whole population, that everybody, that the president and the leadership would be actually caring for others, for the whole country. And that's something you don't see happening. So your need for that kind of care.
I have a need for clean air. I have a need for clean water. I have a need for, we all have a need for regenerative agriculture, because if we don't have regenerative agriculture, we've only got like maybe 60 harvests left. And then there is not going to be any food to feed anyone on the planet. We have to make some serious changes. If we change agriculture, we can reverse global warming. But
So
nothing is happening on that, because Trump's too busy profiting off of the fossil fuel industries and too busy profiting off of the all of these other industries that are more profitable.
Pause you there. So because that's where, again, people might differ, right? Is he really doing that, or is he this, right? But you're saying the need for care for each other, all of us in the country, care for the environment and how we're being affected. So that need to want to care for each other and for the earth. Right? So let me, if you feel heard enough for the moment, if Katrina, it's okay to just one more person. See, Juan, would you like to give a try at just saying back the essence of what you're hearing Katrina say, and then briefly maybe something you want to say that might be different than what's been said?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I've heard was there was a need for shelter, safety, and prosperity.
Okay. Well, we can check it with her, but yeah, say what you heard. You heard those needs. Yeah.
The prosperity comes from the need to have a sustainable environment through renewables.
Okay. Sustainable environment. Yeah. Okay.
And safety and shelter.
Okay.
Because from
Can I just say, and I heard care. I mean, that's kind of, I was focusing on, she seemed to agree with that, sort of the sense of care for each other in the country, care for the environment, that need for care.
Yeah.
Did you hear that too?
Yeah. Care for a brighter future.
Care for a brighter future. Yeah. Okay. And then maybe this might be a little more of an edge, I don't know, for you, Juan, but just even saying the belief, even if you disagree with it, to say something like, I heard, Katrina, you say you think Trump is doing a terrible job with that he's harming and damaging all these things, that he's in it for himself, right? Something like that. Even if you don't see it that way, just to kind of say, I heard you, that's kind of your viewpoint on it, Katrina, even if it's not yours. Are you willing to do that, Juan? And then you can say a few things yourself.
Sure. I heard you say that Trump is doing things that's harmful for the country.
She thinks that. Yeah, she
thinks that Trump is doing things that are harmful for the country, and that he's in it for himself and his allies.
Yeah, thank you. Katrina, do you feel heard enough for the moment to, or anything you want to clarify? Oh, you're muted. Still can hear you. There you go.
I have a need for people to come together and be able to hear each other. So more harmony, a need for harmony, need for like less polarization, need for people to recognize the existential threat that we are in. I would say it's more about my concern for the human race, and in terms of the environmental damage that is being done, in terms of the threat to our way of life, in terms of being able to feed ourselves, in terms of
so it's like these layers of concern, all the way to very existential survival concerns, right? In terms of care and well-being and safety.
Yeah,
and it was like,
and I'm not. I wouldn't say the prosperity thing is alive for me, because I'm fine. You know, I will be fine in terms of my prosperity, no matter who's in office.
Prosperity for the nation.
Yeah,
prosperity for everybody, for the environment.
I want everybody to be. I mean, having the wealth concentrated in such a small number of people at the very top, with everybody else having so little, is not workable, not sustainable.
So if you feel heard enough for the moment, I'd love to give Juan a chance to say a few words before we need to wrap up here. If you feel heard enough, Katrina, sorry. So Juan, thank you for being willing to say that back. And what would you like to say and be understood about perhaps a different perspective?
Sure. There are definitely like 90% of things that I do agree. And the 10% is usually coming from where I disagree. Is the problem is we have so one-sided media that they tend to misrepresent, slander, and make up stuff, lie about a certain group.
The mainstream media, perhaps you kind of think that even at that mainstream level, there's a lot of kind of telling things in a slanted way that's not just about trying to get the objective truth out there. You have a lot of mistrust of maybe the media in general, and it sounds like maybe just like wanting more truth, more trust in what's being said as true, and not trying to bias one way or the other.
Accountability and unbiased truth. Yes.
Accountability and unbiased truth in terms of the media. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, and am I right when you're saying like kind of the mainstream media, what we might sort of in the past have kind of said, oh yeah, that's basically true, but you're kind of questioning even like what we're being told on that and through the media. Yeah,
because there's a famous YouTuber, Adam Krigler. He also goes by Soy Jesus. And before, he was just hearing what mainstream media was saying about Trump. And he actually went to a Trump rally, and his whole perspective changed because it was not what mainstream media was saying.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's kind of maybe part of what you're saying, that if like what Trump is saying or people at Trump rallies, maybe that there's a kind of looking at media in a different way, mainstream media, and the need underneath that, and to question it, and you're questioning it, and you're saying like the need for you is like, yeah, really wanting the truth in an unbiased, accountable way, you said, right?
Correct.
Okay. So again, maybe there's disagreement with that, but the need underneath it, maybe we could all want, right? Is this kind of knowing what's true and trusting it and not having it biased in a way that's really skewing us and away from what's true.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Katrina, I'm going to hand it to you, and maybe you want to reflect that a little bit and then bring us to closure here. We're getting it towards the very end. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And John, I just want to do a momentary check-in. If we go over 5-10 minutes, do you have space for that or not?
I do. Looks like Corey does. I do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So Corey, if you need to go, I just want to thank you for being on here and really appreciate your participation. I know this was a really brief experience of the demonstration. There is another opportunity with John on Wednesdays from 5, John and Paul, on Wednesdays from 5 to 6:30.
Pacific time.
Pacific time, thank you. So I just really appreciate all the guests for being on here. Juan, I wanted to give you empathy for what I heard and see if it matches what you intended. Yes, thank you, Corey.
Hey, Corey.
Juan, what I heard is that I heard some feelings of sadness or frustration because from your perspective, you're seeing that the mainstream media has a bias or slant about Trump that doesn't fit with your experience or your perception of who this man is. And you've seen some YouTube videos of other people who also have had an experience of believing what the mainstream media says about him, and then going to his rallies and having a different experience, and that you're feeling resonance with this YouTuber, that you have maybe seen things that are at Trump rallies or non-mainstream media sources that paint a very different picture from what the general media is saying, and I'm sensing some sadness over that difference, and a real desire for a trustworthy media source, that we could really have integrity and accountability when it comes to the news. And I just want to see if that reflects what it was that you had shared.
Yes, hits the nail on the head.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Katrina, so much for your participation. We had another guest, Aslan, who wanted to participate. Her Wi-Fi wasn't totally stable today. And I had a number of other people who said, wow, if I'd had more notice, I would have loved to come on. So perhaps we can make another opportunity to do it in this format. And if not, there is always the Wednesday format, which it's really open across the aisle. You can look that up on Facebook, or you can look it up at johnkenyon.com. So again, here is the image for Across the Aisle, offered by John and Paul Sterling. And
johnkenyon.com/events. If you go to the events page, johnkenyon.com, you'll see all the info there.
Very good. Very good. So Katrina and Juan, thank you again. I'm going to pull you off of our live stream here, and I can connect with you both later to see if there's anything else you want to say about the experience. So I'm feeling a lot of appreciation for you both.
Thank you, Juan and Katrina, and thank you, Katrina, for having me on and getting to do this and doing what you're doing in the world to promote more empathy, compassion, understanding, more skills that we can all be learning and practicing, and especially, at this time when it's really needed. So thank you for all the work you're doing, Katrina.
Oh, definitely. It's my pleasure. I know just like you and so many other people I've met in the nonviolent communication community, for so many of us, we have some kind of experience in life, and it's like, wow, I need to wrap my life around this. I need to actually make this a really deep part of my spiritual practice and my work in the world. So I felt that calling as well, and share that passion with you, and it's such a delight to have you here. I do want to let people know about some of the other things that you have to offer, because it's more than Across the Aisle. It's more than the mediation that you do. You have the books that I had shared earlier, but I also saw that on Wednesdays you have this Wellness Wednesday offering, that you're doing a meditation on Wednesday mornings from 10:15 to 10:30 a.m. Again, this is Pacific time, and that this is an offering that you can join live. So another beautiful offering that you're doing. And then you also have this it's called a mini coaching session. So I saw that's also on your Wellness Wednesdays from 1 to 1:30, where people can have some drop in some taste of your work on the level of coaching. And there's other things like that too.
Yeah, exactly. On Wednesdays, there are different ways to get a little taste of my approach with this work, and then later in the day, the across the aisle conversation that we've been talking about. Yeah. And I'd say my overall approach is taking the Mediate Your Life work, and now I offer it in 3 different levels of learning. A level 1 kind of foundations, a level 2 that's more intermediate, and level 3 that's about coaching and mediating. Mm-hmm. So and really my approach has grown through, in ways I was talking about earlier, about really deepening into that I call it that triad model of conversation and consciousness. And so how we can really integrate both the language, but also the kind of awareness practice, the mindfulness of different dimensions of mindfulness, and what really that third chair perspective to me really embodies. Mm-hmm. And to bring that into conversation within ourselves, between ourselves and others, and then supporting other people. So just these different levels of really going deep into that synergy really of a kind of mindful awareness consciousness, and the language that can help get us, there's part of getting us to that place. And from that place, how do we respond to all these challenges in a more effective way?
Mm. Beautiful. I saw that the training that you have, this foundations training, starts on November 10th, so 1 week after the election.
Yeah.
I also saw on your website something about registering by the end of October.
That's an early bird price, early registration price that goes through the end of October. So if people want that price, and I have a philosophy of money where I don't want money to be a barrier to people learning this. So always open to receiving requests if people really financially are in some hard ways, but they want this work, and I want everybody to have access if they want it. So
beautiful. That touches my heart. I also I saw on your website, there's just a wealth of information. You've got all kinds of downloadable PDFs that can help people understand a lot of the principles of nonviolent communication, and some maps, so to speak. You've got some guided meditations, you've got videos on there, just a really rich website, definitely great asset for anybody who's interested in learning more about nonviolent communication and about your work specifically. So I just wanted to make sure people know that that's all there, and encourage you to check it out, because it is really a wealth of offerings that you have on your website.
Yeah. Thank you for saying all that, sharing all that, and again for having me on this show. And I realize, as you're saying, I want to. So I sometimes use the term empathic communication, which to me just is a general kind of like mindfulness is for all different practices of meditation and different ways of doing. So to me, nonviolent communication is my background, my kind of tribe of learning, and where this particular approach for me comes out of. But I just think that for us human beings to have a sense of how do we communicate empathically, and what are some of that essential intention, and how that can be part of our health practices of how we take care of ourselves and connect with others and deal with just seeing it as part of like this growing body of
wellness,
of how we can health and wellness, how we can be healthy as human beings, a healthy environment, and all the different levels of health and well-being, and that this is just kind of one of the parts of that. How do we communicate empathically to support ourselves and others? So yeah, that's why I use those terms in kind of different ways.
Thank you. Beautiful. Well, it's really been such a delight to have you on the Igniting Compassion show as a part of Spirituality Gone Wild. I'm looking forward to continuing to join you and across the aisle, and also checking out your mediation training. So thank you. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your passion for spreading empathy and compassion in our world.
Take care, Katrina.
Take care. Yeah, and I just want to also let people know that this weekend there is an opportunity. We have NVC Rising Global Festival, which is coming up this weekend. You can register at NVC Global online for this festival. It's going to be a rich festival. It includes a 24/7 empathy cafe, all kinds of presenters. There's even ecstatic dance happening. So if you're looking for a way to get connected in community and deepen in your nonviolent communication practice, it's a great opportunity. Of course, you can go to lovesmartcards.com and pick up a set of cards and learn how to do nonviolent communication from the comfort of your home. And so wonderful to have you all with us today. Thank you for your interest in spreading the compassionate consciousness in our world. Thanks again to Spirituality Gone Wild for being a co-sponsor of this show. You can go to Spirituality Gone Wild to learn about all of the shows that are happening there, as well as membership possibilities, and to have access to the whole recording of this show and the many other shows offered through Spirituality Gone Wild. It's just a pleasure to have you all here, and thank you, and see you next week.